started.
Right.
The other thing they said is more
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Everybody? We have a motion to approve that. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Motion passes. Public comment. I would say tonight. Board members' comment.
So I don't really have a report that I wanted to give to you. I wanted to go a little bit different and take your questions, if you have any.
Chris,
Yes.
from the last meeting, same question, what's going on with the risk assessment document that we got from RSM?
So I did send it to all of you, right?
Yes.
And I kind of felt like I left it on you guys to determine whether that was something you guys wanted to discuss. That was how I felt like I left it. So that's where we stand with that.
And I offered my opinion in the last meeting that it was not worth it.
So do you guys as a committee wanna take a deep dive into that and, I mean, that's on you.
Chair, do you want to take that as your chair, or do you want to put that one for the summer agenda?
I'd like to see it go on the agenda, I don't know if I want to wait till the summer, but where we might have time to discuss it in depth before they really start kicking you off your heart.
Or do we have any availability in the next few months? Well, we pretty much covered everything.
March and April, if we're only gonna go through the end of April. March financial advisors, April 15th is transportation, but that's when we have to vote whether we're gonna go on in the summer.
That was something that we forget, but having that on the agenda, you mentioned it last time, but I forgot to remind you on that one. Yeah, putting it on the agenda, last meeting during the summer months, because we are able to get an awful lot accomplished.
If you want, we'll put it on the next agenda.
Can we put that on the next agenda? Just, I had an idea, I guess, as an idea. If we have one or two more, then we'll have enough for meetings during the summer, if everybody agrees.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. That makes sense. Okay, so we'll proceed that way. Chris, are there any legislative updates?
You know, I mean, we have different proposals coming out of the House and the Senate on teacher pay raises. The House side is more money, but more restrictive, and the Senate side is less money, but less restrictive. I just had a meeting with the union before I came here, and they're not happy with either one. And 53% of our teachers are already at 47.5 or above, is that the number you gave me? So they're looking at really funneling a lot of the money into the 47% that are below 47.5. And then what happens with the rest of it is still being discussed up there. So that's a big one. The other piece that we discussed when we were talking about something, maybe the budget at the board table the other day, is we're looking at a huge increase in our FRS contribution with no concurrent funding from the state. And in addition, this money that we're getting for teacher raises is going to mean an additional FRS contribution from us with no concurrent money from the state. So while we're looking at increased funding in general, how much, what was the percentage we're looking
I
at?
think it was just about 3%.
Around 3%.
2.7 per student, one of them.
Yeah, last year was about 3.5, so our percentage increase last year was actually greater than what's proposed this year, but because of some of the, I think the emphasis that you see on teacher compensation this year, the story will probably be record amount of money put toward teacher compensation. What we've requested of our lobbyists is we would like, while we appreciate those efforts, they are doing things like eliminating best and brightest and moving those dollars directly into teacher compensation. That's a positive thing. There's a couple other categoricals that they're eliminating and moving those dollars into compensation. Again, a positive thing. Categoricals do restrict your flexibility, and so we're asking really for increased flexibility in the dollars that you put toward teacher compensation. And so hopefully that message is carried across when they put together the conforming bill. Because of the concerns that we have with, if 80%, let's say, which I saw some of the language was 80% of those dollars tagged specifically for teacher raises were to go to that 47.5 group. Any teachers that are making less than 47.5, 80% of those dollars go there, whereas that's 46% of our teaching population. You have to bargain that, and the majority of people typically that ratify those contracts and sit on bargaining teams are of the larger majority. You really need flexibility to be able to get a contract that you can ratify when you sit down at the table. So increased flexibility gives us the local control to be able to do that and work with our association to find an agreement that works best for us for recruitment and retention. And so hopefully, if you get an opportunity to support that, the flexibility is something we continue to ask for.
And just to, the base student allocation, which is the main part of the funding that comes in, that's flexible funding for us. The Senate was proposing a $40 increase in the base student allocation, and the House was proposing a $50 increase in that. But just to put it in perspective, the increase for the FRS is a $75 increase. So neither of them are even covering the FRS part. So not only is there no money for flexible stuff to do, there's money that we currently have that we have to put towards that just to make up that FRS. And it's an 18% increase over this year's FRS rate. That's
What
the
are we getting
retirement
per
system.
student right now?
I'm sorry?
What are we getting per student right now? It's we're looking at an increase to try to cover the difference.
So the base student allocation is the main flexible money. So the $40 is an increase, so that would be a $40 increase over the current. So is that, are you asking what the
Yeah,
current
what
base
is the
student
current?
is? Current base student allocation, real quick. It's-
While she's looking it up, I will tell you an interesting political perspective. I am a politician, so I will give you the political perspective. 53% of the members of our teachers union, the Teachers Association of Lee County, are Republicans. They were able to determine. So when we're talking with our uber conservative delegation, we can tell them that the teachers that are asking for these things truly are their supporters and truly are the people that they represent.
And they vote.
It shouldn't matter, it's
Yeah,
a
we vote.
nonpartisan thing like education, but it does, that matters. Yes, and they vote.
I've seen other candidate forums where that makes a big difference. Your base is standing there saying do this.
The other thing you might want to mention is information regarding the district cost differential.
Sorry, this is huge.
One of the things that is being looked at this year on the House side of things is the way that funding is coming specifically to different districts and the differences in those fundings, which is determined by what's called the district cost differential. So it's used to try to factor in that cost of living. Unfortunately for Lee County, what that means, it will be a reduction percentage difference of 1.3% to our DCD, which is a significant, I don't know exactly what that's going to translate to, but it'll be substantial if it impacts us. And all of the counties here, it negatively impacts Charlotte, Collier, Manatee, Martin, Monroe. It has a positive impact on, and Sarasota negatively impacts. Positively impacts those large, a little bit more affluent districts on the East Coast, such as Broward County, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Pinellas, up to the north of us. So, so there's, now the thing is, they don't win by that much. There's a inch up small percentages, but ours is pretty substantial. Like Pinellas goes up 0.27%, we go down to 1.3%. So those are dollars that come from the state to Lee County, so that means we're going to get less dollars if that changes. Now the Senate did not agree to that, but of course they're going to come together and negotiate the conforming bill. And so we're just, again, that's another one that we're trying to get out ahead of and let our local delegation know that we would not be be in favor of DCD formula.
And the opposition is really gaining traction. I'm getting a lot of emails in my inbox from school board members across the state. So this isn't just a Lee County thing. This is, I'm hearing from people that I only see at training conferences are reaching out on this one. So if you want to reach out on that, it will ring true with our legislators because they're hearing from people everywhere.
And the DCD, so they take your total weighted FTE times your base student allocation times your DCD, which is based on price level index. In the past is what it's been, and now they're looking at adding in, they're not doing it on price level, but doing it on compensation, like taking people with a bachelor's degree out of the education field, no one in the education field. And if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, what that salary would be. So it really does affect us quite a bit, and that is our flexible money. And so when I calculated out using the House's version with the price level index the way it had been, using that DCD, it was a $6 million difference for us in the county. If we continue the way that we are, if they kept the old one, we would get $6 million more than we do if we go with the new one. And it's only gonna get worse as it goes on if they do that, because in order to come up with that, that's a 3-year average for your price level. So they're taking the past 2 years' price level and then the last year's wage, the 2 years prior to that price level. So as they move through, they're gonna drop the price level at the wage, which means that ours is gonna continue to go down. And so it's gonna affect us even in the out years moving out. So. And our base student allocation this year, this is a comparison of the House and the Senate. Our base student allocation right now is $4,279.49. The Senate's proposing the $4,319.66, and the House is proposing a $4,329.49. So that's the difference.
Just did we, a year and a half ago, we actually discussed this several times over the years, when the state took the money from us and gave it to the charter schools, and you said that around the state there was the same consensus on it. Did that ever get figured out what was going on with that?
You mean the 7069, is that what you're talking
I
about?
think so, yeah.
Didn't they give them the money in PICO dollars? Yeah, that was kind of how it was evened out. So they gave them all public education capital outlay dollars go to charter schools, we get none, right?
Yes, so the rule is written that if they provide a certain percentage through PICO, the public education capital outlay dollars, a higher percentage to the charter schools, that we don't have to share our capital outlay millage dollars, but when they choose not to do that, then we have to share. So in the House and the Senate bills, one of them is proposing to give all of the money to charter schools like we did this year in the PICO, and the other one is proposing to give some to traditional schools, but not as much as charters, so I'm not sure how that's gonna play out when it's all done.
That was really the big difference. If you remember the graphs that came out of the referendum, and remember if you go back to the beginning of that, which I think took us back to 2006, we had about $380 million and we dropped down to $180 million. One of the biggest chunk out of that whole thing was PICO dollars. So what we had to do is really make up the difference with the referendum, although it still didn't make up the entire difference from where we were back then. We were getting some PICO dollars, I think like $1 million or two, so there's 50 million across the state. That it used to be shared 50 million for all public schools, non-charters, and 50 million for all the charters, and that represents a very small percentage of the overall state population. And then this past year, like she said, it went down to 0 for us, so.
Which was an okay trade for Lee County because our PICO dollars that we were receiving was a lot less than the money we would have had to have shared from our capital outlay millage. So we were a winner in that rule and letting them do it that way. But some districts were losers in that, so, because their tax base would have been smaller, so they lost more money in the PICOs, but that was one we were a winner in.
One of the things to keep your eyes open for, I just learned about it, is a bill, and I don't know if it's the House or Senate, to
revise the number of years that you can take the homestead exemption to transfer it from 2 to 3 years. You're venting about the impact dollar-wise, but I know that could potentially impact us on our village. If they're now extending that to 3 years versus 2, the number of that $18 million was thrown around. I don't know where that number came from, that's a number that are thrown around right now. I would assume that's going to be considerably higher than the statewide level.
Great, thank you.
This is, this document is also on, we had a briefing last week with the board, so if you wanted to see this document, it is out on that, the webpage for that as well.
Are there any changes at the county level? We discussed that before, county discussion with the county commissioners.
I actually have a meeting with, the Estero Council of Community Leaders next week to discuss this new thing they have, which is, what did I tell you it's called? Proportionate share funding. Proportionate share funding is, I had never heard of it until it was brought to my attention. Apparently, proportionate share funding is a way to fund infrastructure for new developments that doesn't, touch impact fees. I was gonna say doesn't impact fees, but doesn't use impact fees or increase them in any way, shape, or form, but it also doesn't include schools as infrastructure. So schools aren't included in that proportionate share funding. So I've got a meeting next week with some representatives from Estero to learn more about that. I can certainly update you next month.
And when I saw the article in the news press, I wasn't sure if that was part of it or how it's going to 7 token cents or something.
Well, the really good thing about these groups, or this group in particular in Estero, is they are really dedicated to education. So even if the funding is gonna be enough to get them the roads they think they need in Estero, if it leaves schools out, they're not happy about it and they're bringing it to our attention. So I'm definitely excited to learn more about that. Yes. I think, I wanna say it's next week. If February 26th is next week.
Yeah.
Okay, then it's next week.
Any other questions? No.
So we have, you all asked for Bonnie to come back and talk about insurance, and so we have Bonnie from Insurance and Benefits, which you have met before, Dr. Pruitt, most of you know, which is the Chief Human Resource Officer, and Dr. Adkins, you asked if he would come as well, so he's here. We have 2 representatives, and I will let Bonnie or Dr. Pruitt introduce them.
This is Jonathan Anderson and Amanda Burke Cross with Aon. They're our benefits consultant.
Yes, I'm just.
We're here to answer the questions that the group has.
So I told them, I didn't have them bring a presentation because she brought her presentation before and you all just said you wanted to talk about the insurance, and so we're just leaving it open for you all to have that discussion.
I will tell you, from my perspective as a board member, this is an issue. But I don't know how to solve this problem. Given the pot of money that we have for benefits and wages, it all comes out of the same pot. I don't know how to make insurance more affordable without taking money out of employee paychecks. So that's kind of where I come to this discussion, with a complete open mind and a prayer that you can find a solution that we have not thought of. Right, I mean, just want you to know the doctor as I sit down here.
So I have a couple of questions to start off if you want. So I looked at the plan this year, just came out versus last year, and it looked to me like it was worse coverage. Get your thoughts on that. It looked like an HMO almost, like it was Aetna, $900 deductible for employee, no out-of-network coverage. The argument being that Aetna is a nationwide company, so you should be able to get coverage. So that to me is a big reduction in coverage when you have no out-of-network. The other plans had 20% co-pays and out-of-network 40% copay. So just looking at that, and I do the insurance on my company, and my 15-person group has better coverage for the same money as that plan, from my point of view. So that's the first question, is like,
what do you think about it? Do you view that too as being a reduction in coverage? So then the next question I have after that is, I took a look at the state plan. You know, one of our people goes to the state of Florida as an employee. They get full family coverage for $180 a month. That's all they pay versus $1,800 with the district. The state says that the cost of full family coverage is $1,500. Now, I think I might be off. It's pretty close. It's a little less than the $1,800 that the school charges. But it's for a full PPO with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which in my view is a superior coverage to what is being provided through the Aetna. So those are sort of, I just get some feeling, you know, maybe some thoughts on those questions, because that's just from my point of view, the way I see it.
So I'll try to answer them, and if I don't answer them all, we can circle back. For this plan year, we started in May looking at where we were. We are bucking approximately an 8.5% medical trend. And as was alluded to, with the pot of money is the pot of money. So there was no increase to what we call board contribution, which is the money the district puts into the health fund. So in addition to the 8.5% headwind, during bargaining last year, we bargained and agreed with our unions to change how we were funding the health plan. We changed that from eligible employees getting funding for every eligible employee to getting funding for every enrolled employee. So the 8.5 headwind, it was about $7.5–8 million. The change to the funding coming into the plan was about another $4 million. So the position that we started from in trying to craft plans for this new plan year was a $12 million deficit. With no additional money coming into the plan, that $12 million had to be made up through plan design changes. Those plan design changes were made very thoughtfully. We looked at, I believe it was 22 or 24 different plan options to reduce the price of our health insurance. We did a paired comparison analysis with our insurance task force, which is a 16-person committee that includes superintendent representatives as well as union representatives. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a paired comparison analysis, but what that does is you take all of your options and you compare just one option to the other. So if you're looking at like a menu and you're deciding, do I want 1 or 2? And then you make a choice. And then you say, okay, do I want 1 or 3? Do I want 1 or 4? Do I want 1 or 5? So in doing that, the ones that you are most favorable to, rise to the top, and the ones you're least favorable to drop to the bottom. We then took the ranking that was done through the paired comparison analysis, and we made individual decisions, starting with the most favorable option, as to whether or not those items were going to be implemented. So just because something went to the top of the list didn't mean it was going to be implemented. And all of this was done with our entire unions and our through the ITF committee. The decision to eliminate the out-of-network, we evaluated how many folks were using in-network versus out-of-network. It was in the high 90s of people who were using only in-network services. It was a pretty big dollar amount to eliminate that out-of-network option when the vast majority of people were using in-network services. We do offer 3 plans. 2 of the 3 offer out-of-network coverage. The plan that you're referencing is, we call it the 95/20 plan. We eliminated that out-of-network coverage. It was a cost-saving feature. So that's kind of the process we went through for the plan year. I do want to make a quick comment regarding like a particular level of coverage. You have to look at the whole plan, because I can raise up the employee-only coverage and push down the family coverage. So you have to look at, these are the costs of the plan for the enrollment that we have. Over 80% of our employees are enrolled in employee-only coverage. And our mid-plan of the 3 that we offer is set to the board contribution so that is free for our employees. So yes, certainly if you're looking at individual tiers within a plan, especially depending on how many people are enrolled and what the percentage of enrollment is, those individual tiers may differ, but you really have to look at if these are the plan option, these are the plan and the price for each tier, what is that in an aggregate for all of the tiers, not just one individual thing?
So just, I mean, I wasn't here for the last time you had this presentation, but one of the things that I just wanted to point out on a more general level, in terms of insurance within the school district, you know, it is something that's collectively bargained, and part of it is you look at, we're self-insured, as you know, so we have to pay for our claims out of our budget, obviously. The decision that was made some time ago really is that the plans need to stand alone. So what I mean by that is, if you're talking about dependent care coverage with spouses or with children or family coverage, then what would that cost really be to us as a provider, or does the district subsidize those costs? And because right now the environment, at least when I did the negotiations, with that where 80% of the people that we had employee-only coverage, and that's predominantly what gets represented at the table. You know, we had gone out, I think you were on the team at that point, with some options to try to pick up at least children. But there was insistence on, or you need to do children and spouse, and that's going to drive up overall coverage in terms of the cost to coverage if you were going to do that. So if you look at other entities, they do subsidize, like the county, for example. They have a significant family subsidy to theirs, which drives down the cost for family coverage to employees. That is something we've at least offered the children version of it before, and that really wasn't something we could come to agreement on. And I think, again, that's because I think a lot of the majority of people that sit at the table, they're representing, they represent the majority of their constituency, which are single coverage employees. The other piece is that conversation always comes to compensation, and a lot of them want more compensation so they have additional flexibility. So if they want to buy additional coverage, they can, rather than losing that flexibility. The last piece that I think was unique to this particular school year is that there was more pressure to increase teacher compensation than I've seen in probably, well, I started doing this back in 2002. So last year was where we really saw a large number of people that were showing up to bargaining sessions, predominantly the teacher bargaining sessions, where there were some nights there were 100, 150 people in there, and the pressure was to increase compensation, which means that when you have when you're sitting there, you're trying to work out ways to give that compensation piece of it as high as you can. And that goes back to Chris's point about, you have a bargaining, a board-approved amount for bargaining, which we try to push as much as we can towards compensation and trying to get the best that we can and still get that ratified as a contract. And remember, the majority of your groups of teachers, it's a little bit older population. It is a population that is predominantly educated, and we have a higher percentage of females in the population. Now, the reason I pick all those out is because those are the highest utilizers of insurance. So if you're a police station and you have a bunch of younger workforce that doesn't have those same demographics, they're going to utilize insurance less. Our employees have a tendency to utilize insurance more than what you might get with other organizations. So that's something that you have to factor in. The last point I want to say is, if you look at what the increase that we just talked about, the 2.7% increase versus what we have been providing an increase over the last 4 years from the state in terms of our flexibility dollars, we typically, except for last year, which was nice, 3.5%. Prior to that, it was less than 2% every single year. We have been able to, the last 4 years, provide employees at least a 3% overall enhancement to the salary schedule or their salary schedule compensation. So that's looking at, over that 4-year period of time, approximately 12% into the TALC salary schedule, while we're getting on the other side of it, 1.82% increases from the state. So we've had to make reductions in other areas to make that work. And part of that, we had to do some adjustments we did reductions down here in the district office. We were careful about any increases to budgets. In fact, others we decreased, and we looked at ratios that we had in terms of staffing ratios, made adjustments to staffing ratios, and all of that we were able to channel toward increasing compensation, knowing that the amount of dollars coming from the state was probably going to be less than what we had hoped to do in compensation. That's just a little background that goes into why they made some of the decisions they made this year with what they had.
Is it not true that several years ago the district tried to form a consortium with the sheriff and the county to join forces and put all of our employees together to get a unified plan?
Yes.
And because of our census, they walked away from us?
Yes.
Right.
Because of our what?
Census our employees.
We're too many child.
It would have bankrupted them.
Crazy women on bills.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the question I was gonna ask, I forgot, was like, is there a way to piggyback on the state plan? Because we're already in the retirement plan, but again, I know you have the different, I don't know what their they may be younger and healthier than the district,
No,
Yes.
the state plan, you would also have to look at the match.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you're,
So we work, this is Jonathan Anderson with AM Consulting. We work with the state of Florida on their account, and we've done analysis, and actually Amanda Brooke Cross has done the numbers. The contribution level is extremely high for the state. So, I mean, I think if the contribution's high, you can have a great plan.
And that's why I preface it by saying that they actually say, it's about 1,700 for families, that what they say their cost is. They tell you what their cost is. Then they say you contribute 180 of that.
Right.
So their plan appears to me to be much richer.
Oh, it is, I would love to be on there.
But for the same price.
Yeah,
So
but
that,
I think the funding components are the things that you gotta look at from contribution and then the benefit piece. So the work that we did, was focused around contribution and potential changes. But as you know, legislators don't wanna mess up anything up in an election. I'll say I've worked for Blue Cross before. I worked for them for 10 years. I worked for Humana for 10 years. We work with Cigna, we work with United. With a self-funded plan, it's a TPA administration. So I think, brand reputation maybe is a perception relative to actual output, relative to just processing the claims and taking care of disease management. From a 15 employee perspective, as you had mentioned, I'd probably look at your average age, because the average age for the school district, as was mentioned by superintendent, is 46.4. And then the female population, I think, is in the 76% range. So you have to have that mix, and usually with a smaller group, you'll have an age band of maybe five years. And again, we'll look at the younger age females will be more expensive. The males are cheaper when they're younger, but when we hit 50, we start having problems. I'm in that space. But that's where the change in the price points actually change. So, our benchmarking with what Lee Schools has actually been doing is quite impressive relative to the financial outcome with the dollars that are being used when we benchmark against other similar districts.
And if I can just piggyback real quick on the cost. Comparing us to other governmental entities in Lee County is something that happens quite often. And we are the only governmental entity in Lee County that does not have what Dr. Atkins was talking about, a employee rate and a family rate. Sheriff's Department has an employee contribution, a family contribution. Lee County has an employee contribution, a family contribution. City of Fort Myers, employee contribution, family contribution. We have a flat dollar that gets contributed per employee, and we're unique in that as well. So that creates some of that differential as well.
I would love to see the rates if you have them to put up there for us, so we could see what we're looking at with the different plan costs. I'll say this, thank you guys for working on it. I have a husband that works for the government, I have the insurance, it's not perfect, there's a lot of problems with it. I work for a large company, it's not perfect, there's problems with it. So this is a give and take, you know what I mean? I mean, when you're putting these plans together, I mean, my 18-year-old recently needed wisdom teeth out and it is excluded, not covered. That's a $6,000 procedure. They wrote it out of the plan. They don't want to pay for that. It is what it is. What I would like to see, if it's possible for the district to offer employees, is a buyout for employees not to take it. And I know that's something this committee brought up before. If we have teachers, staff members that will waive off the insurance, can we compensate them $200 a month to get them off? Well, that's what a lot of big companies are offering right now. That's some of the government agencies, counties, they're offering $50 a pay period or $100 a pay period if you just don't take the insurance.
So we do offer a $25 opt-out for
great, okay.
people who choose not to take the insurance.
Okay,
And again, that's bargained.
okay.
And what has been bargained. However, if somebody leaves the plan, the money that they have with them also leaves the plan. So it wouldn't actually result in more money in the plan. If we had half the people in the plan we have right now, we would have half the money to spend. Because we get a per person allocation of
So it
people who
doesn't
are
save you any
enrolled.
money?
Saves the district money overall because it goes back into the general fund or the fund that pays for that employee.
Okay.
So we bargained that last year to use that money towards compensation.
Right.
Right, but it doesn't help the plan.
It doesn't help the plan,
Yeah.
it helps the district pot of money, not the plan. But I also wanna say, and correct me if I'm wrong, they can't just waive out of it, they must show that they have insurance somewhere else so that we don't,
Right.
because we're required
Right.
to provide insurance, so correct me if I'm wrong on that one, I just.
They do have there is a waiver option, but they do have to show evidence of other insurance.
And then I've heard some discussion in here about trying to piggyback with the county or police force, which I guess is the county. Has there been any negotiations with Lee Memorial Hospital just on like staying in their network since they are like the third largest healthcare organization in America?
We're always looking at options and engaging in conversations and continually, and the ITF meets every month. And so we're always looking at that and expanding on that, and, you know, we may go to Aon and say, can you look at this for us and see, and so yes, is the short answer, we look at everything.
So we couldn't piggyback with
Well,
them,
here's,
because they're self-insured too.
so I've looked at all of the local governmental entities.
Okay.
When you're talking, the cost that the employee pays, you have three costs. You have the total cost of the plan,
Mhm.
you have the contribution that the employer is
Right.
making towards the plan, and you have the contribution the employee is making towards the plan. So your total cost minus your employer contribution equals your employee cost, right? So total cost minus what your employer is contributing towards the plan equals what the employee pays out of their pocket. This number right here, we are the lowest in the county of all the governmental entities that I looked at.
Which number?
The total cost number. So taking our population, our enrollment, if you were to put us in any other, if you were to change the plan, just
Okay,
like take our employees and drop them in the sheriff's plan, costs are gonna go up.
By how
Because
much?
this number is static. So if this number goes up and this number is static, this number is gonna go up. So if you took our group and dropped us in the sheriff or the county or the city of Fort Myers, anybody else, this total cost number over here goes up. Our total cost number is the lowest in the county in a total basis. Now, if you pull out an individual plan and an individual level, there may be some variation, but when you take our population, the tiers that we're enrolled in, the cost of those tiers, and you get a total, this total cost number is the lowest in the county.
By about how much?
So, the next group is the sheriff in terms of lowest cost, and their employee only coverage is around $745 or $750 per person. and we're at 613 for our board contribution. So the difference between our plan, the cost of our plan and the cost of those other plans isn't buying a better plan. We already have the cheapest in the county.
Okay.
It's what Dr. Pruitt and what Ms. Patrica were talking about, the whole one pot of money and this employer contribution. Because our plan is $150 less than the sheriff, who's the next least expensive in the county. But their contribution is also $150 a person higher on the employee-only coverage than our contribution.
So I gotta look, can I ask a question too? I'm a little confused. So you're saying that our cost is cheaper than
Our
the
total
sheriff's?
cost,
So because before you guys were saying that our population is older and female, so it's more expensive. So am I mixing that up?
so it's, the older female population means it costs more to insure those people like if you put a 25-year-old male and a 25-year-old female on a plan, the female's gonna cost you more to
So
insure.
I understand that, but what the sheriff's.
I think what she's saying
more or
is
less
if you
expensive
put,
than our group.
if you put our 46-year-old woman on the sheriff's plan, it would be more expensive.
The sheriff's
Okay.
plan would increase if they had our population.
Okay.
Yes.
But is it a richer plan or the same, worse plan? It also depends on the plan, but it probably covers, right?
So, right, exactly.
It's hard to, I know it's very complicated.
Right, and so, several of the other entities offer multiple plans as we do. But that's part of the challenges is that one pot of money that we keep talking about and our employer contribution. So just to give you an idea, if you don't mind me using my calculator on my cell phone real quick. So if we had $150 extra per person per month, which would equal the sheriff's contribution, right? That would be $1,800 more per person per year. And we have roughly 11,000 employees enrolled in our plan. That would be an extra $19.8 million.
And we don't have the option to raise our millage rate to cover that.
Correct.
The county does.
Right.
All they gotta do is raise the millage rate and go on about it.
Right.
Or the increase in property values funds it for them, where we don't get
They don't
that.
even need to raise the millage rate, they can just keep it where it is, and as property values increase, they get more money.
And our property values go up, our millage rate goes down to offset it.
And that's for the last few years.
If somebody wants to do employee, spouse, and children, but the spouse is offered coverage at work, do we charge an add-on fee if the spouse goes on the Lee County School District plan?
We have so few people that cover, remember 80% of our employees cover only themselves on our plan.
You can't afford it.
Right.
Well, that's a good statement. There's so few people, I had a friend who used to say the juice ain't worth the squeeze.
Okay,
The amount of administrative work it would take to verify that those people had other coverage and then to charge them for such a small group, it wouldn't generate a significant amount of income into the plan. And most people, if they have coverage somewhere else, most employers offer significantly subsidized, if not free coverage to the employee who works in their facility. So in most cases, if they have the option to have coverage somewhere else, they've taken it.
Can I ask a question? Well, first I'm going to preface it. Okay. So we're probably looking at a lot of aging workforce, maybe now, but they're constant. And we're trying to retain younger people. We have, we'll begin having families or have growing families. That's unaffordable. And so the question is, are we looking at, I know we only deal with money, but we should also look at the aspect of retention.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to make a quick note as to what's up here. It's a little bit confusing because we have two groups of folks. We have 20 pay folks who get 20 checks a year. We have 24 pay folks who get 24 checks a year. So what you see up here is the pay period, that's the full cost of the pay period rate. You have to subtract the board contribution from those rates up there. So for example, the 7419 plan at $306.70, that is the board contribution, so the employee cost for that employee-only option is $0.
I have several questions. Last year, when we met, you brought out not only Lee County, you also spoke about Collier County. And you we still determined that our plan is still a lesser quality plan to theirs. And I want to understand what is their demographic compared to ours, so we are actually comparing apples to apples, because we know our teachers are bouncing between Collier, Lee, and Charlotte County. And I want to make sure that we're not losing teachers over what could be perceived as pennies for the same kind of coverage.
So Collier County contributes about $9,000 per employee per year. So they're about $1,800, $1,700 per employee per year more than us, which again is in millions in terms of additional funding into their health plan. What did I say, 1,700?
And Bonnie, is that bargain down there in Collier? I would defer to Dr. Ivey.
Yeah, I believe it is.
I knew the answer was yes. I
Okay.
just wanted to show the difference.
So Collier's contributing, just using the Collier contribution rate, if we were to match their contribution rate, it would be an additional $18.7 million.
That's one question. Number two, have we looked at fully funded health insurance? They get to take all the others out of the mix as a district, fully fund health benefits. Because I know a lot of companies are doing that, and sizable ones at that. Maybe not 11,000 employee companies, but if we explored that option.
Let's make sure we're using the right definition, because he said fully funded and take Aetna out of it, but if you're fully funded, you have to have a company.
Right. Now will you self-insure your employees?
Well,
through
we
a
are
funding-
self-insured.
But we still have an insurance carrier as part of the process.
Well, they're a third-party administrator though, they're not.
Somebody has to cut the check for the claims.
Well, that's these
And
guys.
adjudicate the claim.
No,
No,
they're the
no,
broker.
no.
They're the broker. How much did you guys make?
Yeah,
They're a broker consultant actuary.
What's your fee?
What's our fee?
From the county school district?
Well, technically, you don't have to write a check to us. Our fee is out of the voluntary benefits for dental and for the Allstate products. And I think last year, it probably averaged around 400, 440.
440,000.
That includes all of our brokerage, actuary, and consulting services.
Yeah.
So
So
as
if we
a,
had to hire somebody to do this, we'd have to pay at least that probably.
more than that.
well, you have to have somebody who adjudicates the claims.
What?
So whether you contract with a large carrier like Aetna or Blue Cross, or you hire a third party that's independent of the carriers, somebody has to adjudicate the claims. And
But back to his question, I mean, we are fully self-insured. So we're not paying, you go ahead and explain what it would
Yeah,
cost
but
us.
we're allowing Aetna and the other big insurance carriers to still drive the boat. Even though ultimately they're still calling the shots, we talk about an 8.5% increase, we talk about all these increases. That's the same as me having my own private insurance, and I'm seeing my premiums going up 8.5%.
No.
So somewhere, something's lost in here, that the percent increase is equal out to industry standard when you are using what these insurance carriers do in the law.
All they're administering it. They don't drive any train. I mean, they don't, I
They're
mean,
paying the claims.
So then-
They're paying the claims and you're
the
using
the
them.
money in, the money out.
Right, but it's our money in that they're dictating how it goes out.
No, it's paying the claims.
Well, they decide what claim.
They decide what claim from our pool of funds.
But I mean,
That's what I'm trying to understand here.
Yeah,
Because I think we're talking apples to oranges here.
yeah, I think we are. I mean, just kind of.
And I talk fully funded, I'm saying.
Yeah, so
there's a
fully
set
insured.
full pool in the district of $20 million, I'm throwing an arbitrary number out, that's allocated towards paying out employee health claims.
Yeah, let me just, if I can, I'll try to just kind of clarify the carrier fully insured concept that we're talking about. You prepay for the healthcare. The insurance carrier, which is licensed in the state of Florida, which you would have to have a licensed state of Florida carrier, it'd have to be Blue Cross, Cigna, Aetna, Humana, probably missing somebody, United. Those are fully insured, so you have to take their plans, follow their procedures, and you're paying the money and they're running the boat, as you mentioned earlier. In a self-funded plan, you're not paying premium or taxes, you're not paying a profit to the organization, which is usually 1% to 3%. The taxes are usually 0.5% to 3%. And as we mentioned earlier, or we didn't mention, but there's a health insurance tax with the Affordable Care Act that you would be paying as well on the fully insured space. So when we ran the numbers, you spent about $417 million of claims in the past 5 years. If you would have been fully insured, you would have ended up paying between, excuse me, where'd my number go? And it's a range, 16 million to 27 million is what you would have paid on a fully insured carrier play.
In addition to what you paid in the claims.
Correct.
So we, of course, historically, we don't know exactly what your fully insured premium rates would have been. So those estimates are based on what your actual costs were for any given year. But in the long run, being fully insured is more expensive than being self-funded. It's more about taking on the risk yourself. So when you're self-funded, the claims are your claims. And so you have to be able to manage that volatility. So you may have a high month of claims and then a low month of claims, and you have to manage that because your claims are your claims and your TPA pays those claims on your behalf. But when you're fully insured, you pay that same flat premium with including the margin and the other things that he mentioned. So you know what you're paying in advance for budgeting purposes, but you don't have the volatility, but it over time, it is more expensive to be fully
Yeah,
insured.
you won't know what your renewal is the next year because they're gonna come back based on your loss ratio. So that's the carrier side on a fully insured side. When we talk about self-funded where you are today, you pick the plan design that you want, you make the decisions, you know what the trend is running, you receive the rebates, and basically, the way you have it set up today is there's actually a choice model where there's plans that will cost money where we move to a no out of network, where 99% of basically 99% of the members receive care through that network. That's why the insurance committee chose to have that option. You also have the option to have an out of network at no cost. And there were two out of network, zero employee premium plans that were offered. So when you look at it, there's three choices. About 80% of our clients have 3 or more choices. And then we're seeing basically 90% of our clients on this size, I'd say 2,000 to, the larger accounts. Miami Schools is one of our accounts as well. 90% are self-funded. And the only one that isn't self-funded is in a location where there's actually a staff model HMO, where the carrier actually owns the clinics and the providers and the imaging, and they're actually managing it in that fashion. So that's just a unique kind of circumstance.
I got a question.
Sure.
If we're spending X amount of dollars on employees, and Dr. Pruitt said multiple times over the last few years I've been here, we've had trouble with retention and recruitment, that each year when the school year starts, we're struggling, we always have a shortage in this area. What are you helping and offering to pay for, let's say, the children with the spouse? Forget the spouses, which a lot of them are also single mothers. What did that help
But
as?
Daryl, it's gotta be negotiated. So I want you to think about, as we're sitting at the negotiating table with the union, and you ask them, most of which are at the table that probably don't have young children that they need to have covered, do you want to spend $10 million on, putting towards insurance, or do you want that 10 million to go towards a pay increase?
I'm trying to figure it out. I looked it up, and to go with Healthy Kids for a child at a full pay rate is $220 to $240. I saw two different numbers when I saw that per month. If you have more than one child, and you're looking at $460 to $480, which, okay, in that case, they're still actually cheaper than adding it on to an employee's plan. How do we bridge that gap if the state plan, like the state Medicaid plan that they're self-paying for is cheaper than what an employer is able to offer? And a lot of employees single mothers would have to go get a second job if they want to add their kids onto this plan.
I'm not
In that case,
disagreeing with
that's
you.
why a lot of them would leave the area.
So the question I asked last time too was, why don't we, in the paycheck, we tell them that you make X amount of money, but they don't really get that because if they don't take the health plan, they don't get that money. I know you said a $25 buyout or whatever. But would it be helpful to our employees to go ahead and pay them, like a cafeteria type thing, pay them the money if they don't take the district plan, so they could go buy Healthy Kids, or they could contribute that toward their spouse's plan? I mean, would that be, you know, I know you're gonna say it's gonna be somewhat self-selecting, because the health, you know, we'll end up with the worst health people.
Well, it would also have to be negotiated.
Might be.
So even that would.
That's not a decision that the district could make on their own.
You'd have to offer that up to the union as an option. But I mean, would you think that would be helpful to employees if they had that flexibility to just take the cash and buy coverage elsewhere?
I don't think so, because as Bonnie said, anytime you start taking away from the pool of what we have, then it changes the dynamics of everything, and so.
Well, it might drive our cost up a little bit, because like I said, the healthier people that get better coverage
Right,
elsewhere
right,
cheaper
right.
can leave, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna be stuck with
Yeah.
people who are. But I mean,
I
it
mean,
might be more fair anyway, right? If you're
Yeah.
healthy, you might not have the option to go get
Right.
something better than cheaper for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So less of a socialistic.
well, and I like the plans that say if you know, I tell Bonnie this all the time and she gets mad at me because I say, I want to, if you are someone who can demonstrate that you don't smoke, you don't have unhealthy lifestyle, you exercise, you do what you're supposed to do, then you should pay less for insurance.
Sure.
And then if you, but.
We actually had one year where the district did come to the table and said, we are willing as a district to offer the board contribution for employee coverage, full for at least one of the plans. And we'll even offer a greater board contribution for children. And the district will pay for it. We did say children, because we didn't include spouse, because spouse was by far our most expensive tier. We were willing to pay extra for the children. And we couldn't, it wasn't agreed to. And so that, and I think what they wanted, because bargaining is a give and take, they wanted to include the spouse in that, spouse and family, which would have driven up our overall cost to the point where it just would have been, we wouldn't have had anything for compensation if we were to go that route. So they opted to go with more of a just employee only, continuing employee only plan, even when we were gonna offer, actually put more money on the table. It would have been overall more compensation on the table overall to the salary schedule, but the non-negotiable for us is we want it in children. We're not going to roll it into compensation. And so that was just that was a deal breaker. We just couldn't reach agreement. So
Have you guys tried it again?
Well, yes, not as directly as that.
That's a great deal.
Yeah. As far as we've been able to get in the last couple of years is, we added $500 one year and then another 127, so towards the board contribution. And that was challenging. Because again, you're talking about a group that represents 6,000 of our employees. And so take that $500, just for that bargaining unit, $500 times 6,000 employees is how much?
A lot.
I was doing the 127.
Anyway, so, but that's taking money out of that pot that it's that immediate gratification I wanted in my paycheck. I want to see that my paycheck, $3 million. So, I mean, it's.
We'd like to try to get some of that $3 million from the county, impact fees, since obviously the county really hasn't done anything.
Now you're really going down a different road.
I'm trying to help
I'm not
that.
against you, I'm just saying, that's a
You know,
whole
retain
nother.
employees and recruit employees, in my opinion, I mean, I could be wrong, I don't know how this committee feels, but
Yeah.
that could help with recruitment and retention by just adding one to children. I know a bunch of them, which I mentioned you earlier,
Yeah.
that have left solely for that reason, they just can't work two jobs.
Why don't we take the sales tax money and build a bunch of clinics?
Whoa.
Right?
I think
No,
that's
but it's not what the voters agreed to.
That's capital expenditure.
Was not one of the items on the
Wasn't
list
one of them.
that we put up to the voters. I'm sorry, but that's really, I'm really dedicated to making sure we only spend money on what the board has agreed to spend money on. And
Is this
that's
what that
not
new
safety,
thing
security,
is?
technology, building new schools, or maintaining new schools, right? Those are the four.
This is what was put out in the paper, where they were talking about an increase on the taxes to help cover wages and benefits.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Is this what they're talking about, I want to say it was a few days ago in the newspaper, about increasing wages and benefits? Is this?
That was the millage discussion that was brought up to the board, so that's something different. Because the millage discussion would have been toward, that could be toward, that's for operations, whereas the half-penny referendum was toward capital.
As is impact fees. So any increase in impact fees would go only toward capital. It wouldn't give us any money to increase health insurance benefits, improve health insurance benefits, my bad.
Couple of things. We keep talking about the millage rate. We know that the county is not kicking back any more money than they absolutely have to, because they don't want to upset the builders and the market, the housing market in Lee County. Even though we are number one in the country for every report, they don't want to upset the apple cart. So I think that's going to be a battle we're never going to win. They're just afraid of upsetting anybody. The question I have for you, Angela, is you keep bringing up about union negotiations. I took enough courses on how union politics work from people who dealt with it. If we took a survey of their constituency and brought it before them, rather than the select group that's going there and saying, we're looking out for the best interest, because we know darn well they're looking out for the best interest of the few, not the all. Maybe that might help. If we put a survey out to the teachers and staff and understood exactly what do they want. Do they want it all in their paycheck, or do they want the benefits? Is family benefits more important to them than single benefits? We put out a proper questionnaire to them and really understand what our employees, staff really is looking for. When we're sitting with the union, at least it puts us in a little stronger position than us trying to negotiate with a few people who have their own select view of what they think their constituency wants.
One of the things that we have to be really
Yeah.
careful of is we could do something like what you're talking about if we did it under, if we did it jointly. You know, that's something we could do. We could go to the union and say, we would like to do this.
We've done it with Spell, and that's, yeah.
To provide us information for bargaining. And so I think we could probably get some traction if we made that request of them. What we wouldn't want to do is do something like that unilaterally, anything that would be interpreted as if we are trying to gain an advantage or broker deal directly with employees.
And I'm not looking to broker any deal, what I'm looking for is, let's find out exactly what our employees really want, rather than hearing it at a bargaining table. I do enough negotiations, I ask for the moon. I know I'm never getting the moon, the union's gonna do the same thing. At some point, we have to understand what is it that will really get the deal together, that both parties will be equally miserable. You're never gonna have both parties equally happy. Well, as long as both parties are equally miserable, it seems to be a good negotiation.
One of the things that we do is we use what's called interest-based bargaining, okay? And really, I think that and in that bargaining, what we are committed to is really full transparency at the bargaining table, so you don't have, we come in pretty much, we're a public entity anyway, and so you have to be pretty transparent with your budget. So we're very transparent in terms of the dollars that we receive, how much we have in all the budgets, and what we believe that we can provide in terms of compensation. And then that's where the process begins. When we do data collection, we agree to do it jointly. But we can do requests, just like you say, we can go to them and say, we would like to do this to get a little bit more of a better feel for how our employees feel about their benefits so that we can make informed decisions.
We have to be careful this year, though, because depending on what the state finally decides, if they tell us that 80% of our funds have to go towards getting everybody up to 47.5, and there isn't any money, then that is gonna create a huge problem.
Yeah.
So we gotta be careful.
Because there is a history where we all are caught a little bit in the middle between, I think, the big state association and a lot of the legislators in the state of Florida, in that, you know, and this is where bargaining comes into effect. 447, you know, that's what governs collective bargaining in the state of Florida. And decisions by the legislators to do this or do that is perceived by some, meaning the SBA, infringement upon 447, whereas legislators, on the other hand, feel that it's our right as legislators to make the law of the land. So there's this friction between the two groups, and we're kind of in the middle with the bargaining piece of it, which makes it all interesting. So yes, we would have that constraint on our negotiated process and on really our local control, and that's why we're asking for some additional flexibility. One thing I just wanted to mention, there were a couple things that were brought up that I go back to Darrell Paul's comment about Collier County. One of the things about Collier County, they have a more favorable DCD, which means that they get a larger share of the pie than we do in Lee County. And even though they would say, well, our cost of living is higher in Collier County, we would say, but to your workforce that you get to pay,
Yeah.
a lot of them live in Lee County.
Yeah.
You know, so we're competing for the same workforce there, and they're getting a bigger slice of the dollar. And then the second thing, I think Chris had mentioned about the rollback rate, you know, if I look at 15, required local effort was 5.037 mils in 15-16. It's now 4.153 mils. Here we are, so you're 5.037, 4.441, 4.431, 4.153, and I think they're proposing another decrease of something for this upcoming year. So what that means is, you know, it's less dollars that we're collecting as property values go up. What we're collecting in terms of a portion of that goes down. Whereas the county, this is one of the things that when we were talking to Roger Lay, he was like, hey, you guys just need to use this growth increment model to help you pay for this and that. You know, as the property values go up, capture the difference and pull it off into another fund and help you with the capital. We said, that doesn't happen here. We don't have control over our required local effort. That is a decision made by the legislators. Unlike it is, county does have that control to be able to set the required local effort. We do not. And so that's another little point of frustration is if you look at required local effort, I mean, if you look at that, it's pretty dramatic when you look at what the way of experience recently. So anyway, and that's available online. I'm sure you guys know our budget books are all online.
We talk a lot about family and kids being separate. I mean, I have a child who's got a chronic issue, costs a couple of grand a month. What really is an option for someone who has that? You know, it's if you don't include them in the plan, what do you do? How does you get someone, you know, how do you get coverage for a child that's in that?
Well, they can have coverage. It's,
No, I mean,
but
if, yeah.
We don't exclude them from the plan. The price may exclude them from the plan.
But then is there an alternate that's?
Well, we refer them to Healthy Kids.
Yeah,
Okay.
kids.
Does everyone qualify for that?
Yes. It could be a full pay or depending on your.
It's just what you pay is, it's
varies quite a bit.
Right,
It could be significantly more
Yeah.
expensive.
But even if they have access to coverage, they could
They
still
have
opt for that?
access is what
Yeah,
it
it's like
really.
Yeah.
200, I think the full pay is like 240 per kid per month. It's pretty good coverage, but it gets expensive if you have multiple kids.
Oh, that's per kid.
Yes, per kid. I looked into it, that's the reason I know, I've done a lot of research on that.
Yeah.
And then the other question I had, and Angela, you alluded to it, is, some sort of improvement if you, are healthier, you do things to do that. My insurance company does it, gives me 20% off based on what I do every year. What kind of options exist in that? Or do options exist in that?
So we have taken a slightly different approach. So we have a wellness program, and we have opportunities for employees to participate in different health improvement activities throughout the year. At the current time, they earn dollars towards a year-end payout.
Okay.
And that money right now is paid to them in a check. So it'll be a line item of a wellness bonus. I would love to get to the point where we were able to, instead of giving people the cash, put that into some sort of either a health HRA, put it in an HSA or an FSA, so that the employee can spend that on further improving their health. Because right now they can take their money and they can buy beer and pizza and cigarettes with it if they wanted to. Whereas if it was in one of those other types of accounts that I mentioned, those things can only be spent on the things that are defined by the IRS that are medically necessary. So people could get a crown, help pay for a crown with the money that was in a health savings account or a flexible spending account. Or help offset the cost of glasses or, any of the other things that qualify out of those, but they're restricted to being medically necessary items. Whereas, as soon as you give somebody cash, they have the opportunity to spend it on whatever they want. If they want to use it towards, glasses or a crown or some sort of health improvement, they can. But at that point, it's just cash, so they can spend on whatever they want.
One of the things,
Like the beer and pizza.
there for a while, and we're not currently there anymore, but when we first dug in with the wellness program, we saw some tremendous savings. We actually went through 2 or 3 years.
how many millions have we figured out we probably saved?
Oh, with the wellness program, we probably, it's avoidance,
Yeah,
cost
that's-
avoidance. It's about probably $100 million, $95 or $100 million since we really dug in with the incentive money.
We had some negative trend for a while, if you can believe that. I mean, we literally had the national trend continue to go up, and we actually saw a negative trend for at least a couple of years. Unfortunately, Bonnie made sure to tell me, I said, okay, we've maximized that. We've hit the wall with what we have been able to do without, because other entities use the carrot and stick. We use predominantly carrot in our approach. And that's been pretty successful. I think, what's the percentage that participate?
We're well north of 50%. I think we're in like the 60-70% that participate in wellness in some way.
And that's a carrot approach. My wife works for Lee Health, and they have, I think, a combination approach really. And so in order to qualify for certain plans, you have to be a proven non-smoker. And then, you have to, where we want you to do the wellness screening, we encourage physicals and all that, and we do have that participation. At Lee Health, you will only get the cheaper plan if you follow the rules of that plan.
And they don't have unions,
Yeah.
so they can do that.
And when you reach a certain age, there's other required tests that you have to undergo, and so it is interesting to see the difference between the two. The other thing is, if you go to the cafeterias, you go to the vending machines. I mean, it's all out.
It's all yucky.
Hey, Nate,
Collier also has
It's all
what I would refer to as the stick approach. So the price is the same no matter what, but if you don't meet certain targets, then the benefits within the plan get less rich. So your deductible goes up, your out-of-pocket goes up, you're still paying the same thing for it, but your plan gets less rich if you're not meeting those targets.
they made me a vegan for a while, but then And I've got to miss my pizza and beer.
But with talking about the Lee Memorial Plan, something that is just like we've all gotta understand is that is part of the package they offer their employees when we, I mean, I work for Lee Memorial, when we sign on, that's part of our package. You guys don't have that option at the school district. I mean, the money is not, it's just not there. I mean, the fact that you're paying for the teachers, like that is an incentive, that is part of their package. But, you know, Lee Memorial, that's part of what they're offering their employees is you can add your family and kids for
They
this.
said they don't want it, the union bargain,
Yeah.
said that the employees don't want it, so.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, like, I think your suggestion is good, and,
The
or
survey,
maybe
I
even a
do too.
focus, could be a focus group, maybe, less, I don't know, would that be something?
Who's on your task force?
So we have 4 representatives from our teachers union. We have 4 representatives from our support union. So that's the 8 on the union representation. And then on the other side, we have people like myself and Dr. Pruitt. We have a principal representative. Dr. Dustmore sits on the committee, our director of payroll. So it's, we're considered superintendent designees.
And then there's
Could
the
you
board
have
liaison.
teachers that aren't in the union on that? No?
So the unions appoint their representation. So the teachers union appoints their 4 people, and the SPALC union appoints their 4 people. They tell us who their people are. They are public meetings, and so certainly anybody can attend the meeting, but in terms of being appointed to the committee, it would be within that union.
Mary Fisher, there's also a board liaison.
It's not Mary
Oh, it just
anymore.
switched.
My bad.
That's okay. It was Ms. Fisher for a long time. It's Ms. Gittens now.
That's good, sorry.
Hey, Julie, this question is more for you. With the unions, do we have any ability to transfer employees over under a corporate and bring them on as a co-sourced or outsourced employee?
Oh, no. No, bite your tongue. Don't you speak those words on this property.
I'm saying it for a different reason.
They just.
Yeah.
I worked in Jersey City, and there was a bank across the street that had about 6,000 employees that all received their pink slip on Friday. And on Monday morning, they got their welcome letter. They are now employees of I'll call it a consulting company. And all of them, so, because what it allowed for is a bigger bargaining chip with the insurance companies, because now it wasn't just an isolated group with one specific demographic. It's a national group with a much changed demographic. And they were able to better negotiate salaries, they were better able to handle benefits and everything else. And that was the way the bank basically survived. They're still around to this day with that same concept. And I don't know, because we're public education, where we can draw the line. Can we, because I know we do have firms that we bring in and we have outsourced relationships. I didn't know if we have that ability with other positions within the district that we can take advantage of that, roll them out of our current plan, roll them into an outsourced relationship without aggravating the unions, but in order to get them at least better benefits.
Well, I know that we have, as a district, we have the capability. Example, I know Jacksonville at one time outsourced transportation. Collier County outsourced custodians and custodians, yeah. I will say that there are often political implications of that. And that's the one thing that we have to consider as a risk factor. I do know that down in Collier County, the superintendent that proposed that was like the nail in the coffin down there. I believe, there were probably a number of things. But yeah, he had a tenure of about a couple of years. I don't know about Jacksonville. I do know that Jacksonville is often brought up by our transportation folks. Because what happened, the day the board voted in favor of outsourcing transportation, there was a major accident, or once they took over, the day they took over, the outsourced company took over, there was a major accident coming off one of the highways there off the on-ramp, and of course, that was, see, we never should have done that. But anyway, to directly answer your question, yes, there are ways to do that. There are things that we have thought about. Again, we're transparent with our unions when we talk about it, but yeah, looking at things like, are there better ways that we can transport students in some of our outsourced areas? That's something that has been looked at. We actually have a Greenbelt project going on right now. It doesn't involve outsourcing, but does involve taking students that are in outlying areas of the county and being able to transport them more cheaply than driving a bus way out onto a barrier island and picking up a kid, but instead, utilizing a cheaper form of transportation such as a van, which doesn't have the fuel costs of, I want to say they get about 4 miles to the gallon. But anyway, so there are things that can be done, but you have to think about the political implications of that as well. And I know the case of Miami-Dade, they did an attempt of that thing I just described with the outsourcing, and ended up costing them more because they had to make concessions. They never tell you that, but they had to make concessions at the table, and it costing them more to get a contract ratified than they saved on the outsourcing. So.
And again, that's where the council would step in and assist in crafting the contracts so that there are no surprises embedded within those contracts. I'm just looking for options, and if somebody could do that kind of analysis, I'm not dictating what you or your staff should be doing, but that would be potentially an option for us to explore, because Bonnie, I think you put it perfectly when you said, in order to give the teachers salaries that they deserve, we now have to find some other way of giving them benefits, but those benefits may be reduced than they got in prior years because there is just so much in that pot. And I'm just trying to think of alternatives. How do we maintain that same pot while still maintaining equality for our staffs?
I never saw one of those health savings that you were talking about, other mild health, that you were trying to promote. I've never seen anything wanting any of my wife's benefits.
So we've had a high deductible health plan with a health savings account for, I believe, the last 3 years. We're going into our fourth year.
I mean, for people that are healthy and trying to, stay healthy in their program.
Right, so.
Yeah, your wellness plan. I've never seen you could mention.
So it's been paid out in the May 15th check the last several years, and then last year we moved it to the May 31st check. So that's when those wellness bonuses have been paid out.
She would have had to have gone to a health screening.
What I was saying is I haven't seen anything to even invoke to that. Maybe we haven't plateaued out. If we didn't, did you know about it, Ken?
So we go to all the schools.
You may not have heard about it, but employees have all heard about it.
We host health screenings at all the schools and many of the locations.
There's a lot of emails that go out about it.
So can we talk about the RFP? Because when we went around circles last time about doing an RFP for the next cycle, and I think the spirit of that was to look for maybe out of the box opportunities that are out there, fintech or disruptive, and may not be out there. And Aon, you guys probably have some thoughts on that too, or you would know about them, I guess, if they were out there. So, because you were kind of pushing back on the RFP because you felt like we kind of know everything, we know what the numbers look like, we know what our census is, we know, but I think we were looking, at least I was looking more for out of the box, like the guy that was in here. I don't know if that's any good, but, are there other things going on in the market that would be something we could look at, that are not traditional? So we want a more open kind of RFP.
There's multiple ways to look at what's out in the market. So we, as Dr. Pruitt said earlier, we are always looking at the options that are available to us.
But I want to, but we aren't always like discussing every option and every meeting and everything we've had, because sometimes it's too premature to share information, which can then also affect your negotiating ability. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So we are looking, we're looking at,
Lots of options.
yeah, lots of alternatives. Certainly going to bid is a way to do that. I think we need to be very careful about thinking that's the only way. I know in the time I've been here, we've done what's called an RFI, where we, like when we're exploring something new, we explored health clinics a number of years ago, and we went through a whole RFI process before we ever went to an RFP process, because it was something we'd never done before. So we didn't know what we didn't know. So we went out we went and asked the carrier, people who offered those types of services, a whole lot of questions, and they responded to our RFI, which then put us in a really good position to go out to RFP. So I guess I just don't want certainly an RFP is an option. It's not the only way to explore what's out there and available. And we are always turning over rocks and seeing what's out there and what's new, and I heard you say fintech. I'm not even sure what that is. I'm happy to look into what fintech is.
Well, there are a lot of like banking applications online, on financial technology.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm guessing there's gonna be some disruptive technology in the insurance field as well. There already is.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
And
Because we've some interesting stuff out there.
yeah, so I guess that, and yeah, I think all the stuff you said makes perfect sense. Request for information, but somehow you gotta entice people to come, and probably come to you already, but come to you with ideas and options,
So we're in a current we're doing RFPs and RFQs we do ITNs, which is a different type. I'll get the current people to explain all that. ITN is an invitation to negotiate. We're doing those on a regular basis. We do have 3 that we'll be doing in the next 12 months. And I don't want to misspeak. I think there is, when we do RFPs or our ITNs, we always put in an initial contract period and then an ability to renew. And we've just started a renewal cycle with Aetna. But I think we have to be really careful with how quickly we are turning over people's benefits. A number of years ago, we did 3 RFPs for dental in 3 years, and by the 3rd year, we had 2 people send us a proposal.
Sure.
Because proposals are huge, it's a lot of work for the people who are proposing to submit those. I think we have a great process in public sector in Florida on how we do that. But when you ask for one, every time they turn around, eventually they're like, we're gonna go put the work somewhere else because we're done with responding to your same RFP over and over again, or ITN or and then the cycle with the employees as well. So employees are looking for some stability in their benefits and their carriers and knowing what they have. The change that we made this open enrollment, for those of you who may have spouses or children who work for the district, was a significant change. We had to do a huge amount of communication, and we didn't change carriers. So all of those factors have to be taken in, and we will certainly continue to evaluate the performance of our carriers. I am not a set it and forget it director, and I've canceled a contract in the time I was here because the performance was abysmal, and we followed the procedures within the contract for remedy, and the remedy wasn't brought, and we replaced the carrier with somebody who's doing a much better job now. So I guess I just want you to have the confidence that we are looking at things that are out there, even when we're not putting something on the street as a formal bid or a formal process.
Our consultants have been sitting nice and quiet and want to see, what thoughts do you have? You see the challenges we have as a district. I'm sure you've encountered it in other districts as well. What recommendations would you have And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, I know you haven't had a chance to really process it. I
Are
don't
we
think-
negotiating?
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. You know, I think there's risk and reward in a lot of different options and innovation out there. And, you know, we are seeing direct contracting going on. We've had conversations with Bonnie and some other delivery systems about that as a potential option. We've looked at narrow network. Narrow networks are, you know, basically done by the carrier as well. Not as many providers in there, you know, maybe 60%, 50%. It's not at that volume where that's actually, you know, consideration at that point in time. You know, we've seen messaging throughout the state of Florida on some different ideas. And we've worked across the country. I'm on a national public sector vertical team. So we look across the country on some different options. Reference-based pricing, if you've heard of that, that's out there. It's still kind of to be determined whether it's actually effective in a local community, whereas it's basically you hire a TPA, they pay out, they put the price point that they want, which is Medicare. And if you know, in the healthcare space, Medicare is 100%. We pay probably 200% or more on Medicare in the commercial space. That's how the current environment is, the business model is designed. However, you can get letters from delivery systems and hospitals and doctors that say, I'm not taking patients that are with a plan because they have a cost plus program. So some of those have been more successful on a multi-state, smaller kind of plan set versus in an entire community where, you know, you see that type of outcome. The one area that success was Montana that we saw that, and it was mainly because it was the state plan, and the state plan was the largest insurer in the state of Montana. So negotiation and leveraging is a lot different from that perspective. You're seeing other components with this TPA approach with health advocate, Quantum, which is a completely different service model. But you have to look at all the pieces because it's a puzzle that you need to put together because you have to make sure you continue to get your discounts from the carriers or the network. So you could go to, you know, a network that's paying 200% of Medicare versus a network that's paying 150% of Medicare. Your dollars are spent in your medical spend as well as your pharmacy spend. So yeah, we've looked at a lot of different things. We've negotiated with Aetna this year on the pharmacy side. We should see, you know, $4 million savings is what we had anticipated to see for 4/1. And then, you know, we negotiated the contract for basically the CVS clinics to be opened up to the providers. So there are a couple enhanced programs that we did come up, which is innovative and a little different than your normal. Number one, we negotiated behavioral health access at no cost to the employee. So you'll see that in the 4/1 effective date. Family members, you know, obviously associates and teachers, administrators, et cetera, they'll be able to access CVS clinics at a $0 copay. And there'll be a $0 copay at your Teladoc component. So I'm sorry, telemedicine. Yeah, I'm sorry, telemedicine. So there's a tiering component that's kind of set around trying to get people at that front part of care. And then with the wellness piece as well, you want to focus on high cost claims. If you can get your chronics in at the tier 1 on the chronic side of the business, then you can save, you know, another couple $1 million in that, catching them earlier versus later. So the programs are in place. They're more integrated, I think, than they have before. We offer a IBM Watson data warehouse that we're using to basically compare and identify these areas of chronic conditions that can be improved, as well as diabetes. There's opportunities in that space too. So I would say from you know, you talked about clinics earlier, that was a discussion. I've got a couple clients with clinics, cost them anywhere from $1 million to $3 million to do a clinic. Their goal is to make sure. Every year, yeah. And their goal is to make sure that they have people in those, like you have to fill it because you're paying for it. If you're not filling it with 12 people a day, you're losing money. So completely different approach. And I think what was smart is, you know, building bricks and mortar for a clinic is you own it, as we said for quite a long period of time. This new CVS model, quite frankly, you have a clinic and you didn't have to pay $3 million for 3 clinics.
And I think something else that's important is something that we didn't do this year, that we, you know, when I say we look at things behind the scenes that we don't talk about, one of the things that we looked at was would we gain anything by putting in a narrow network around musculoskeletal conditions, so you know, knee replacements. We dug out all that data, we shopped that, and what we found out was that our plan is, we are already getting within our plan design with the carriers that our employees are using, a really high percentage of our employees are using the lowest cost carrier. And we ended up not putting in that network because the data didn't support adding that to the plan, because that particular piece of the plan was working as designed. So that's just an example kind of something, I don't know, we've really even talked about that outside of our conversations in insurance and benefits. We haven't even really talked with the insurance task force about that, because when we dug in and looked at the data, it wasn't a good thing to move forward, and so we just put it away because that area is already working really well. With our wellness data, with the screenings that we do and the reporting that we get from Aetna, we design that wellness, those wellness components that people can participate in, specifically around the areas of our health plan where we're seeing the high risk. So for example, diabetes, 36% of our employees have diabetes. We offer a diabetic program within our wellness program on how to help educate diabetics to eat properly so that their blood sugar stays stable. So, and the employees can get money in that wellness incentive for attending, they have to attend a certain percentage of the classes that we offer. The other thing that we've done is we changed our plan design a little bit. One of the things we started seeing creeping up in this data that we look at every year was we started seeing higher instances of colorectal cancer. And we were looking at our screening numbers, and our screening numbers are below national benchmark. So we have a lot of people who aren't getting screened, and then we're seeing tick-ups in treatment for the condition. So because we're self-insured, we were able to say, you know what, for this next year, we want to change our plan design. We already did this, by the way, so it's in place right now. So for the current year that we're in, not the one we're about to start, we had preventative colonoscopies covered at 100%, but diagnostic colonoscopies were co-insurance, and you know, there was money out of pocket for people to go get diagnostic colonoscopies. And we said, you know, people were not getting the screening numbers that we need, and the feedback that we got was, well, I'm afraid to go because if they find anything, then it's going to cost me a bunch of money out of my pocket. And we said, look, nobody's like calling their friends and saying, hey, what are you doing on Friday? Let's go get a colonoscopy. You know, they're not doing that. So we said, let's go ahead and make diagnostic and, or preventative and diagnostic colonoscopies covered at 100%. Now that doesn't mean if you ultimately need surgery or something that's gonna be covered at 100%, but the screening and the procedure to monitor that condition and the savings that we're anticipating coming out of that as a result of people not ending up with that condition or that condition being caught earlier. So you're not waiting until, you know, you're super symptomatic or in pain. You're going hopefully and getting the screening, and you're also able to get diagnostic at 100%, so we can, with the idea that you would go, hopefully, there's some people you can't talk into it no matter what. And we also changed our plan to cover Cologuard. So for people who are at low risk, and again, that's something you need to work out with your doctor, the Cologuard is a great option that doesn't require the time away from work and that sort of thing. So that's just a way of how we've kind of said, okay, here's what's going on with our plan, with our data. Let's try to make this more accessible for employees, save some money on the plan, encourage people to get screenings, and the Cologuard is essentially a wash in terms of cost, because I can have 10 people do a Cologuard for every one colonoscopy that I spend. Sure. So if all of my low risk people are out here getting Cologuards, but I've avoided a colonoscopy as a result of that, there's no additional cost to the plan.
I don't think I've ever heard such an enthusiasm.
Get one right
Pretty sure she can make anything sound interesting.
Well, I will tell you, I very much enjoy my job. And people look at me a little odd, because they're like, insurance? Really? It's like, yeah, I know, I'll just put on my weirdo hat, because, but yeah, I do like my job. And I think the data is the super interesting part to me. You know, when we're getting those reports twice a year, we're digging into the data, we're seeing where our spend is off, where are our screenings below benchmark, where is our spend above benchmark, what can we do to impact that from a plan design point or an education standpoint? Like, that's where the great stuff in healthcare is. You know, yes, it's wonderful if, you know, we have that healthcare that's gonna Humpty Dumpty us back together someday, but if you can avoid spend, especially when you have employees like we do who work for the district, I think we have an employee who's been with us 47 years, if I'm not mistaken. You know, if you can avoid costs along the way and catch things earlier along the way on a population that stays for a very long period of time, those savings, and I hate the word savings, which is why I told Dr. Pruitt, it's cost avoidance. You're maintaining a cost. My dad calls it mall math. I don't know if you've ever heard that term. So I told him I saved $100. He's like, I want to see it. So, well, no, I bought stuff, but I didn't spend $100. But being able to work with folks and go to these health screenings, and not that I like what we have, what we call red flags, that's when we have to call the ambulance. We don't have very many of those a year, but when you do, and those people come back later and they say, I had no idea I was in the middle of having a heart attack, or I had no idea my blood sugar was 400, and I'm walking around completely oblivious, and we were able to get them care before they ended up who knows what, you know, that's exciting, sorry. But that's where it's really exciting, and then I'm a total data geek with where our spend is and what we're spending money on, and trying to spend those dollars as judiciously as possible. And I'll make one pitch, because I know, you know, you guys are a piece of the community, but I just want to piggyback kind of on what I think Ms. Patrica was saying, and that is that we need more funding in education. We just do. I took our plan and I said, what would we spend if we matched the county's contribution, the sheriff's contribution, the city's contribution? Y'all, it's double-digit millions. It's like, if we were to, as a district, match the Lee County contribution, what they pay for their employees, it would be an additional $57 million a year because of the number of people that we have and the difference between what we contribute and what they contribute. I don't know that we have that sitting around somewhere. So we have to be really judicious in planning out in selecting the plan designs that we select, working with the data. Did you have time? Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to knock you out over there. But in trying to buy the best plan we can buy with the funds that we have available, to continue to negotiate with our unions, to where do we spend those dollars that's going to be best for both sides, as Dr. Atkins was talking about, our transparent process with our union negotiation, and then to buy the best plan with the dollars that we have, which I think we've done. Would I love to have some more dollars and go buy a better plan? Sure. Anybody know anybody in Tallahassee with a checkbook? Because, you know, we could use that. But I think we do a really good job with what we have. I'm really proud of the plans that we have and the wellness program that we have. I think it's certainly supporting our overall mission of offering our employees the best that we can, with not only to get them healthy when they end up unhealthy, but to hopefully keep them healthy so they never end up unhealthy, which is a win for everybody. You know, a healthy employee is showing up to work, they're in front of kids, that those kids have a stable person who's teaching their class, because that teacher didn't have to go have medical procedures and medical care, because those things were avoided as a result of the screenings and the preventative things that we're pushing up front. So that's kind of my soapbox, but thank you for listening.
Question back for you folks. I have clients that are now paying doctors personally rather than using health insurance, because the doctor said, pay me X number of dollars per visit, I don't have to deal with the insurance company shenanigans. You go to Publix, you can get certain prescriptions cheaper without insurance than you can with insurance. Are we exploring that with Aetna? Because that's one of the policy carries that one of these individuals uses. They said, I'm paying all this money to Aetna, I could probably do it cheaper just dropping insurance, and now that the Affordable Care Act is not mandatory any longer, I think we're starting to see more and more people saying, maybe I need to explore whether I pay these ridiculous premiums, or I self-insure myself.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if we could take advantage of the FSA and the HSA to offset some of that, where they're not using the insurance to go to certain doctors, because it actually works out a lot cheaper than the deductible that they're gonna pay if they have to use their HSA or FSA.
I mean, look, there's, like I said, there's risk and rewards and everything. I mean, I can't tell you if you're gonna walk out of here and have a heart attack and have $100,000.
I'm not talking catastrophic, I'm talking strictly
But that's,
preventive maintenance and those types of things through the course of the year. You get your annual checkup, those types of things.
so those are covered, at 100% with the Affordable Care
Right,
Act.
if I get the flu, which everybody seems to be getting, everybody's running to the doctor.
You could
Some people
call,
run to the emergency room because it costs them less.
yeah, so, couple things I would say on that. Number one is, your top spend here at the health plan on particular categories of spend is preventive care. You're spending about $4 million on that. Your prescription drug costs are below benchmark. On a global perspective, the years that were hit were really big, high-cost claims that hit you. You had, there were 2 eye drop solutions that basically were $450,000 per eye. So that was like $1 million in spend from that standpoint. There's other biometric drugs that are coming down the pipeline that will be hitting in the plans. An example of that was hepatitis C, where 2 years ago that first came out, actually cures hepatitis C. The original time frame for that was 10 months, 10 or 11 months, and then they moved it to 6 months. So I think a lot of these specialty drugs are gonna be the big challenge. You can't buy that at Publix, you can't buy that at, CVS or whatever, you need health insurance for that. FSA, FSA dollars, I think, yeah, that's people, if they have money to put away and they can use that to spend, I think that's great. Your HSA, the HSA program
Yeah, we do
here-
offer an HSA, high deductible health plan with an HSA here for
Yes.
employees to take advantage of. So if they can opt into that higher deductible health plan, it does reduce their cost. And then not only do they get a little bit of money from the board, but then they can contribute money to that as well, up to the maximums that are allowed under the IRS law.
And I would comment that I would say it's not a little bit of money in
Okay, thank
comparison to
you.
other districts. The funding for your HSA plan today is $1,860 going into the next plan year per year, which I have to say is unheard of for the rest of our clients. It's a large sum of money. So for those who are healthy, but want to be on the plan, they can be on this plan for free and get those HSA dollars to use in the event that they're needed. If they're not needed, then they can roll those over. If they leave the district, those dollars do go with them.
And those HSA dollars, every employee gets the same $7,360 a year. But the employees who select that plan, their premium, the part that, I'm getting my tongue off. So the piece that goes into the plan is in that $5,000 mark, and the other $1,800 is the rest of their $7,360. So selecting that plan doesn't get them any more money in total, just rather than it all going into a premium, they get a pretty big chunk of it into the premium, and then what the remaining amount goes into their HSA. And so it's $77.50 per check. And then, as I said earlier, employees can contribute on top of that, tax-free dollars in, tax-free dollars out, tax-free growth within that plan for future needs. So that's why we offer that as a plan option for folks who say, look, I don't need much of anything now. Let me pay a lower premium. Yeah, I'm taking on some risk because you do have that high deductible, which is a requirement for that HSA plan. But then you're banking money for later. So if somebody were to get in that plan for 3 or 4 years, get that $1,860 every year, they would have their deductible covered after a year or two, and they would have their total out-of-pocket covered after about 4 years. And then they would pay nothing out of pocket if they had a catastrophic event at that point.
But you're saying also, when they leave, they take it with them, so it's an additional compensation that they're gonna take with them. There's no way for that to roll back into a general fund.
Right, an HSA plan the HSA money would belong to the employee. What I was talking about earlier when I was talking about HRAs, that, if you've heard of that, the health, I can't remember what the R stands for. Thank you. I was like, oh, it's the R. The HRAs is a different type of product that offers similar, but the money would stay within the plan. So it's just a matter of how you want to design it. HRAs require more administrative burden on the district than an HSA does.
You mentioned Montana.
Mm.
Could you explain that? I mean, is that something you deal with Florida, right? So would that work in Florida?
Yeah, we have a national, where we work across the country. So we are always listening to the most recent programs. So it's, the Montana program was, as I mentioned before, is designed and leveraged from the state employees account, which is the largest account in Montana. And they moved to basically a cost plus. They dictated their own price that they were gonna pay providers in their community, and throughout the state. As I mentioned, the leveraging ability is a little different with the state account versus a local account where you can't guarantee that the delivery system here would accept those particular rates.
Is that something you've looked at though for Florida? Or you probably must have thought about it.
Oh, sure. I
State of
mean,
Florida,
but I
the
think
districts.
the challenge is that because it's a risk reward approach, right? So you're gonna go through, you do RFP, you go through the process, you pick out your solution, and then you have the school district, the board members, everybody agrees to it, then it goes out, and if the hospitals say, I'm not taking this plan, you have to pay me cash, or I'm not taking that particular reimbursement rate, you're gonna get the phone calls. So there's a lot of risk there, and we haven't seen success here in Florida or even implemented in Florida.
Well,
So,
North Carolina.
The only other state, which actually we represent them too, is North Carolina. And it's still in debate as far as what hospitals they accepted. At first, only a third of the hospitals in the state of North Carolina actually signed up. So if you think of the medical community in North Carolina, and only a third taking it, there's not a lot of happy folks. So, again, conversation piece, I think it's something that we continue to look at. But as I said before, the risks that are involved in that are pretty dramatic. The other approach that we've been working with Bonnie and Dr. Pruitt with is basically more of a direct contracting strategy with a potential delivery system and the community. So, but again, very early stages. Our understanding with that particular delivery system is they moved everybody over, closed network, first part of the year. This is the first year they've actually done it. It's replicated off of a Medicare, kind of a Medicare value-based approach with outcome-based plans. So early stages, again, I think it's the risk, the reward, and what we would rather do as Aon Consulting is make sure that we do the analysis, we work with the contracts to make sure that they're gonna hold those up, and make sure that it's working before, if that's what you wanna try, then, that's, you'll have to all agree to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, everything all makes sense,
Yeah.
I don't know whether hospitals here or what they're gonna take.
You got Blue Cross, you're good.
One last question, because we have a hard stop at 6.
My question's for you. Could this committee talk about recommending that the school board go ahead with the millage? Because it seemed last week, they had a couple meetings about it. It seemed like some are for it, some so much.
You actually can make a motion on that, and if it passes, then yes, it would go to the board. You made a motion on that in a second.
Did you discuss it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any input on that one? You would actually have to make, the motion.
Can you frame it a little more specifically?
Could we discuss the millage?
Regarding,
Which millage?
what are we talking about?
Are you talking about
Gosh, I don't know how to explain
county,
it.
or-
What the school board was talking about.
You mean get an understanding of what the required local effort is?
Well, I
Where that comes
understood
from?
that. I just understood that we need it and maybe we could make a recommendation to go ahead with it.
The problem is the state of Florida legislature won't let us do that.
To put it on the millage?
That's correct. They determine what our millage is.
I thought we could go for a local county.
There is Some kind of local, yeah, but
It's the
it's,
operational village is what
Yeah,
additional.
but they have to vote on that, right?
the board would have to.
No, the people.
Yeah, but the board was deciding whether or not to put it on the ballot.
Okay, yeah, okay.
You with me? I'm not, explain it for me, I'm not doing a good
I'm with
job.
you now.
Yeah, so I can tell you, we had a workshop, was it a workshop last week? Did I just remind you?
Yeah, well, I was gonna just say, if we're done with the insurance people, could we maybe let them?
Thank you for your.
Yeah, no,
I was hoping they.
if we have to stay, they have to stay.
Huh?
If we have to stay, they have to stay.
I know.
Yeah, then they'll get excited that there might be more money coming in.
No, you got enough problems.
And before they go, can I just say, Bonnie, I would love it if we could put together a video, I'm the only one that would watch it, explaining what you explained about how if you take a 46-year-old woman from our district and put her in the sheriff's department, how much more money it would cost there. That was the highest level of understanding I've had regarding our insurance plan since I've been associated with this district. So that explanation to me was super helpful. Was that helpful to you in terms of?
Yeah, this was way better than last, yeah.
I left the last meeting with you, more questions.
So I know the questions are out there from our employees, given the changes we've had, so I don't know, I mean, I don't tell her what to do, I don't tell anybody what to do. But if you think that would be helpful for our employees to put together one of those awesome communications videos explaining why we are where we are, that might make our employees happier, maybe not happier, but more willing to accept where we are, if that makes sense. So just wanted to-
Also, can we send out
She was really
the
good.
survey monkey? Dr. Crowe used to do that when she was the superintendent of charter schools. Dr. Crowe was the superintendent of charter schools. She used to send out survey monkey to that school board all the
Yep.
time to gauge as well as to the employees. Would it be within our rights as within the system to send out to the employees to find out if they were interested in the option with having the children, like you had said, Dr. Atkins, rather than just
Yeah.
relying on their representation, so that we gauge what they actually want
Well, I would
directly
think
from them. It's just
that
one
would be a
question.
recommendation that you as a committee would make to us, for us to bring to TAC, right?
That's valid.
TAC and staff, so if you guys wanna recommend that we do that, then that's an official recommendation.
Well, that was kind of,
Sure.
I was just.
I understood that
Do you understand where I'm going with this?
The takeaway-
I can make that one down.
The takeaway today was like, we should know what our employees really want.
And that's
Yeah.
why I don't
In
feel
one
like we
form or
do.
another, right? Whether it's a
Right.
focus group, whether it's a survey, whether it's
Sure.
whatever.
But would Jimmy Hoffa support you sending Survey Monkey out to all the Teamster drivers?
Yes.
Yes.
But that's only
It's not around the horse.
I did talk to Dr. Pruitt, and, you know, and like I said, based on our joint communication, joint information relationship, if this is a recommendation of the committee, we would be happy to take it to both Talc and Spout and jointly work on something like that. I know that she knew that they had done something that similar, at least with Spout. She wasn't sure if they had done something similar to Talc. So if we make that recommendation, we certainly would be happy to move that forward. And I think our bargaining units would
Anybody that works
agree with that.
But are we limiting the survey just to TAC and staff members?
No.
All employees.
Yeah, that's what, cause,
Technically, they represent, like if we're TALC, just if I'm a member of TALC, I'm still part of the bargaining unit even if I'm not a dues paying member. So they represent all members of the instructional part. SPOUT represents all of that unit. And then we would go ahead and send that out, salary schedule in, and the administrator, which is a very, very small unit.
all right,
Can we get a, do we have a
could we make a
recommendation?
motion that the school district send out a survey to all employees asking them questions?
Can you make a recommendation that we get TALC to do?
Yeah, I think we should, it should be more like we ask you guys to go figure out the right way to do this, right? To get a sense of what our employees
Really want.
Yeah.
Rather than just relying on 4 people in a room.
And there could be a variety of ways you can do that, but, you know.
That's where I've seemed to have my problem this entire meeting.
Rephrase
I feel like we're not being
rephrase.
represented properly. I thought you said it perfect.
Tell me what to say.
We tried to do this, but 4 people in the said no. I think
Administration
now we need to go around and ask
with
every
TALC
employee.
and Spout
Or in
how
conjunction
to
with that,
send out
which is what I-
periodic surveys to test employee happiness.
We have a motion,
You got it, make it.
No,
I'll second it.
Do we have any other discussion?
No, she's trying to make a motion. You
I
can't-
thought we did.
No.
Well, Bill just worded it though. He did agree though.
Well, what, okay, restate the motion then.
She made a motion that the district reach out to all employees, including the union, to find out if the employees are interested in employee-only or employee and children benefits.
No, that's, but what Greg said is, we can't tell them, recommend to them that they go out. We should recommend to them that they talk and spout about doing that.
Can we send out to our employees a survey?
No, we told them we can't.
No, they have a union.
Yeah, but I think there's more to it than just do they want to include their kids. I mean,
It's
that's
like,
just-
it's like judge their happiness periodically on other items as well.
And we could work with our bargaining units to develop a survey relative to their medical
Benefits.
Right. Yes.
And to answer your question, we can go directly to our employees, but that would really violate the spirit of negotiations when we have an interest-based bargaining process. So if you were to tell me, go send a survey, I would vote no to that at the at the dais, because I don't want to violate the relationship we have or the interest-based bargaining process. Is that fair?
What's the correct way to word it so that would be.
You said it, somebody said it, you said it.
Can you design customer satisfaction? What, I think you can do that.
No, it was just the board, the district should come up with a way to assess the needs and interests of all of the employees of the district in conjunction with the unions to determine what the employees really want.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I second.
Okay, you seconded. Any other discussion?
Did you get that?
No, well,
You should see my.
That's sort of, we have a family.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
and we'll get it off the table.
You got to pay.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Kelly, when we do a survey, when you send out a survey, do people fill it out?
A large portion of people will.
Okay.
This will be an important one. I think it'll go around.
I just didn't know if they,
and if it's done in conjunction with the union and they promote it, then they'll get even more.
Do we have any other discussion?
We don't vote?
Let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Recommendation passes.
Who seconded it?
Read.
actually, I don't know. I think I thirded. I think I should.
Randy made it and Ken reworded and seconded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a team effort.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the committee?
Yeah, one other thing. In addition to what Chris asked you to do, Bonnie, the other thing I think that would be beneficial, since I was also confused between HSA and HRA, I guarantee you our employees probably are also. There may be more employees that might be considering HSA, knowing that that's money they could potentially take with them when they leave, as opposed to thinking, I'm taking a lesser plan, that's wonderful, I'm taking a lesser plan, this money's been set aside, use it or lose it.
We just completed our open enrollment process and we did a great deal of communication around the high deductible health plan, the HSA, and how all that works. So I think we can incorporate kind of a question, if it's okay with you, part of the survey is, do you know what an HSA plan is? Have you considered it?
Yes.
As part of this larger survey to see how well that message has penetrated and to see if that's an area where we need to do some more education.
Yeah, because I think people are also gonna get confused, is that now taxable income to me when I take it? But I'm saying there's a lot of,
It is if you take.
one question leads to 5 more questions.
You are correct. If you do not use the funds as directed by the IRS, it does become taxable income. But if you use it for qualified medical expenses, then it's tax-free in and tax-free out.
So they can still buy pizza and beer. They just.
They pay taxes on it.
Or use it in their retirement to offset some of their Medicare expenses.
Yeah, well, and once you reach 65, you can use it for your Medicare premiums, which is another piece of the education that we just provided, was that people could pay premiums with it once they reach age 65. Under 65, you cannot.
Is it annual or can you carry it over?
It carries over in an HSA.
For how long?
Ever.
Forever. It's a retirement plan.
Well, usually
Yeah.
for 30 years, you might.
That's what I was saying, you
have
can see we still have questions regarding it, and you spent a long time explaining it to us.
So we just moved
wanted
to Michigan Credit Union, and they pay a high interest rate too on HSAs. It's really nice, they have a nice HSA account.
I'm just reading.
Can we talk about the millage? Because I feel like they're running out of time to get that on the ballot.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
The millage, are you talking about with the county or what the district was trying to
Let
propose?
Mr. Tubbs.
It's the local option, we have to go out to the voters and ask them to approve an increase in their millage that the district could use in operations.
For teacher pay, right?
Teacher pay and
It
benefits
wouldn't
is
be
what they
necessarily
talk about.
looking at teacher pay.
No, so we had a workshop? We had a workshop last week where we talked about it. Staff put together some information, including a timeline of how we went about the half penny sales tax. And when did we do the half penny sales tax, 2018? We did the half penny sales tax in 2018, and back as far as 2014, this committee recommended the half penny sales tax. So when we looked at the timeline of, I think the general feeling was, you said we're coming up against the deadline. The general feeling is we passed the deadline for the 2020. But it's certainly something that you guys as a committee can take a look at.
And is it not the case that if you miss it for 2020, you cannot do that again since it's revenue related until 2022?
That I don't know. Well, that would be the only opportunity anyways, would be 2020, because there's
And
no
you can't do a
general
special election
in
anymore.
between.
It has to be on.
Well, that's not true, because a special election is allowed for the millage, but not for the half penny sales tax.
For operational millage. it's-
Although if we decide to go after it, I'm sure the legislature will change the rules again and not allow special elections for the millage.
So here's a question, do you feel like you have enough money from the half penny for all the CapEx
Do
required?
we have enough for all of it? No,
Never.
but I will
But I
tell
mean,
you,
is it more than maybe what was it? In other words, is there a play to say, you know what? We found now that we have this half penny, but we kind of need more of it in operations rather than capital, and ask for permission to move part of it to millage?
no, by state
Or use
statute,
part of
that's
it,
not
or
permitted. By state
operating?
statute, half penny sales tax revenue can only be used for capital. We cannot go back to
That's a
the
state
voters.
statute?
That's state statute, that's not.
So you couldn't go out and raise a sales tax for operational
No.
at all?
That
That's
would have to be a millage
okay,
rate.
so that's an.
If you remember at that time, you and I were discussing it at one of these meetings, and Mr. Tubbs was the chair, and he said that we needed 550 million, but it was only gonna come up with, hopefully, they thought 515. And that's where we were going back and forth on discussing it. Is it enough, or are we spinning our wheels and gonna still fall short? Specifically, was you with the heavy, going back and forth on that one.
But if we had too much money, they could lower the capital millage rate, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we could give the money back
So
to
you
the.
can shift the capital millage rate to.
No, you can't shift. We could lower what we collect from the taxpayer,
Right.
so we give the money back to the taxpayer.
The
Right.
1.5 mil we get right now for capital, we could lower that.
Right.
Below 1.5 mil to bring in only what we need.
Right.
But remember, it was a $200 million per year decrease. And right now, the half penny sales tax brings in about 83 million, so it's not like we're flush.
Right.
But as I'm touring schools, I'm seeing less sad conditions than I was seeing
Right.
before. And,
So, I mean, see, I'm thinking like, well, okay, so we lower the capital millage a little bit. We ask them to raise the other millage to cover operations, and we maybe issue a little more debt to cover the schools. I mean, just to juggle the money around a little bit. Because you can issue debt very cheaply, we talk about that too.
There's the cops loans.
I mean, if people, it seems to me that the environment for asking for more taxes might not be so great. But if once people bit the bullet and said, okay, I'm paying half a penny.
If you were to go to a referendum and say, we'll lower your capital millage rate, and this is gonna give it permission to increase our operating millage rate, then you have to lower that capital, and then you could probably be back in the same problem we were before. But that's why we never mentioned the millage rate in the half penny sales tax, because you didn't want to be tied that you had to do that. the district may choose to do that out of, goodness of their heart.
So you would put it at risk, basically.
Well, if you mentioned it in the referendum, you're required to do it.
We're not in a position right now where we can lower our 1.5 mil for capital. I mean, like I said, the 83 million we're getting is still 117 million less than we were getting 10 years ago. So we're not in a position where we can lower our capital. I'm not, this is my opinion, that's my sense of.
Without it, you'd be in dire straits, but you're not flush with it.
Correct, and I would say that our schools are in dire need of maintenance and rotational maintenance needs to get them up to standards and keep them up to standards. And if we were to do that, I would think that might not happen.
And when you're talking taxes, it's coming out of everyone's pocket. Whatever way you want to talk about it. I think you need a lot more lead time than you do when you're going that way. And there's a sense that the school's already got that sales tax, and it's still very current in people's terms. And you're not going to have a supportive county.
We didn't have the Spoiled County last time.
Okay.
So just a couple of things that came up, just to, I think, reiterate or support, kind of like Kelly was saying, in my opinion right now, because we did go through those lean years, we are in a catch-up mode in terms of catching back up with where we were with the rotational schedule. Because we had $318 million back in 2005, 2006, and that dropped down to 118, and just 10 years later. And so during that period of time, we went from a really nice rotational schedule where we were replacing roofs, HVAC systems on time, to really just replacing it when something broke, then we fixed it, which in many cases is more costlier approach overall, long range, because you're not doing, the preventative stuff that you need to be doing. So in order for us to do that shift right now, I don't think given that we need to do that, which is the largest chunk of the capital budget, is actually devoted to the maintenance part with with what we're doing with schools, with the number of schools that we have to bring on board. I think we have to be really cautious to do something like that. Right now, we are just starting. I wouldn't even say we're catching up. We're still behind in terms of where we want to be with providing student stations. I mean, you just talked to Gwen about the East Zone. She's always like, "What are you doing in the East Zone? We're overcrowded in the East Zone." Like, well, we got walls that just went up at Gateway, and we're trying to break ground with the middle school and then also an elementary school over there. But if the growth continues at the rate that it's going right now, we're going to need even more than what we currently have on the books to build. You've got, in addition to what I just mentioned, you've got 2 more schools down in the south, and then we have an innovation school that we're trying to build with FGCU, and that still won't probably handle all the capacity that we need by the time we get to the end of even a 10-year period of time. Now, growth rates could change, but right now, we're looking at still a steady clip of at least 1,300. But if you look at what came over winter break, what was the number of students?
I think it ended up being a net of 1,200 over winter break is what I saw. It was like a whole school came in over winter break. Yet kids leaving, kids coming in. It was
So think about that for a minute. That means that when we left, after winter break came back, we had 1,200 more students that enrolled in our school district.
We need to cancel winter break.
Yeah, that is a solution.
I'm not kidding you, I thought it was open enrollment when we came back. The lines outside student enrollment were.
Yeah, I saw them one day, it was crazy.
I'm like, we haven't started open enrollment, what is this? It was just absolutely crazy.
And then, some other things that really are outside of those numbers that you don't really see with the number of ELL students that we have, are just astronomical. Yeah, Alex can talk to you about that. Astronomical growth there. And what we're talking about, we're the fastest growing, we've been the fastest growing in the state of Florida in terms of ELL population, English language learners, for the last 5 years. And that actually looks like this year will probably be an exponential growth, not just linear, it looks exponential. So anyway, having said all that, one of the things that I think Chris had mentioned, just to give you a little bit of timeline, if you do go to the workshop last Monday, you can open up and see the presentation that was given to the board. December 2014, this committee approved a motion to recommend the referendum. In May of 2015, the school board at that time opposed the referendum and voted against going out. There was an election in November of 16, and then this committee in April of 2017 approved a motion to recommend a half-penny sales tax to the board. And then that summer, there was a consultant that had been contacted, some outside community members got involved and formed a political action committee, or they did a consultant actually that did a survey of the community and determined that there was actually a majority of the community that was supported. And then summer and fall, we started talking about board members concerning the timeline and process. In fall of 2017, a community survey was developed that I mentioned, and then the results were shared with board members and the superintendent. And in January 2018, there was a board briefing on capital funding deficits and draft resolution to do the ballot language. So that's when that actually started to move from, 2014 was the first time this committee weighed in, and then you really had it weighing in again specifically April 2017, and then January 2018, we had board agreement to go forward. The one thing that I think is important is that there was a tremendous amount of work that went into garnering support around that. We had over 164 community presentations to different groups like UPAC and Chambers of Commerce and the real estate groups and the knitting club. And that was actually true. So my point is that I think these efforts required tremendous effort to build a groundswell of support. And I mentioned that to the board. I would mention that here, that that's important to understand, and the time to do that.
I mean, I did a lot of that work, and I forgot how long it took. Like until you showed me that timeline, because you look back and you think, that was whatever. But looking back, it was a lot of work. And Mary, I didn't mean to be dismissive to you. As we have new county commissioners coming into those offices, I feel like there will be a significant shift in the level of collaboration we see between the two governing bodies. So I was trying to be
I
funny.
didn't feel your dismissal.
Okay, good. I was trying to be funny, but I wanted you to know that
I
I
understand,
I
we have
grateful.
to change the leadership.
Exactly. We have great hope.
Well, there's a
But can we look at 2022?
If the board is already workshopping it and looking at it, do we need a motion to make a recommendation to them? Other than
I think it shows support.
give them support to proceed?
I do too.
I would like to see you guys take a deep dive into it and look at do we do a quarter, do you do a half, do you do 3/4, do you do a full? What would the money be used for? I would like, if you guys are gonna take a look at this, I'd like a deep dive, strong recommendation to include at what level would you pursue it, and what should that money be used for? Because there's a list in that presentation that is as long as I am tall, really.
Would you do this in May?
I'm sorry?
We okay with doing this one in May?
Oh, sorry,
That sounds like a full year's agenda.
that was just a planning meeting, May 20th was just a planning.
I thought we might be able to get those, I wasn't sure. What do you think? Do we have time for those, or is
We can sure try. I know the impact fee is going to take up a vast majority of this meeting. So I just want to make sure before they push forward with that audit and the audit plan that they're going in the right direction. Because that audit plan, if they do it properly, is going to help us with the impact fees. It's going to help us because you're going to be looking at finances as part of each of their audit. It's not just an operational. You're supposed to be looking for improvements. That was part of the agreement that we had with them. It's not just supposed to be, here's everything you're doing wrong, it's also supposed to be, here's some industry best practices to consider. So I want to make sure they're going down the right path with doing the internal audit. And that could also help benefit us in our discussions. That's why I'm so frustrated with the risk assessment that was done, because that was supposed to give us some benefit at this committee. When we see it on a report, we know what they looked at. It'll give us some guidance as to, well, we don't need to really focus on this because they already hit on that during the audit. And here's other areas where it was not part of the scope and we should have been.
Why don't we proceed with the motion that's on the floor, or vote it, send the recommendation, and then set a monthly meeting agenda to start the process of doing the deep dive, because that's not a 1 month.
That's a whole summer
project. I'm thinking it's pretty much a year.
Well, at least during the whole summer,
We could
to
start.
dive into it.
That's why, can you please make sure it's on the agenda next time, so that we can set a summer date?
You got it.
Since I've been on this committee, we've never taken the summer off yet,
No,
so why should we start now? So as we have the support, let's go. Does everybody agree with me at least?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So we'll have that on the agenda for next month, and when we vote on that, we'll vote on,
We've got a motion on the floor, we got a
which was the motion?
I didn't really make.
I thought we already called the motion on the one.
Did we vote on it?
Yes.
Okay. Send the recommendation.
Anything else for the good of the order, for the committee?
I'm gonna be adjourned.
I don't know.
So one of your pictures have questions.
Bye guys, thank you for being here later.
It really was.
Yeah, I know, I was looking at the clock, it's really Thank you so much for coming in.